we're going to jump into, man, I'm telling you something else, right? I love this guy. All right. Who is this guy? Well, first of all, we're going to jump into Jasmy coverage. So this guy rocks. He absolutely rocks. If you're not following Neo X Tricks, well, I don't know what you're doing. All right. This guy brings the deep dive research. And then, of course, if anything, I try to give my own take based off of, put an outline for it. This is good stuff because, as you guys know, right, I'm a school teacher. I might have signed up for the calendar year this year, but nonetheless, I always teach. So if I'm not teaching this calendar year, I'm with you guys, where the case be. This is right up my alley, right? I want to share this with you, the community, and so on. So please smash that like for some Jasmy coverage. I want to get into this, okay? And Neo X Tricks, you can follow him at Bina A17. Again, give him a follow. He definitely deserves it. He's been ticking up. That's good. Last I checked, he was at like 200 followers. So he's really, really grown. That's awesome. Anyway, let's get into the coverage. Here's the outline. So he says, here's what Kazumasa Sato, CEO of Jasmy, thinks about Jasmy and national education in the future. You can read the entire interview if you choose to do so. We'll bring you that link here in a second. It does show Sato all over it, right? But there's some highlights here, okay? And if anything, we're going to get into all this stuff. So I'm not going to read all of this right here because I just want to get right into the thread. So in this thread, okay, and it's really, really something, it's basically this right here is from dot.asahi.com. And it goes into this whole big whopper of detail in regards to the democratization of data, right? To be expected, right? But this right here talks about, for instance, a different use case that you may have thought was speculative, but it has been confirmed. Okay, check this out. Kimura. In the old days, not only my parents, but also my neighbors will watch over me in the park. Right. Think about oh man, maybe you guys are old enough. There's some of you guys are like, very, very old school Gen X. I don't mean that like in a bad way. Or I don't know, maybe some of you guys are older than that. Maybe you're like literally from, the baby boomer generation boom, if you will. And you could literally remember a time, and I've heard about this, but I never experienced it. Parents wouldn't have to worry about watching their kids in the park. And then, of course, we know that there was like kidnappings and stuff like that. And then it scared the hell out of all parents, and they're just obsessed with it, and rightfully so. I got to watch my kid because somebody could steal my kid. And it's a sad, sad thing. Fast forward to the modern day where we're at, right? I haven't had a chance to see, that new movie with Jim Caviezel and so on, Sound of Freedom. I heard nothing but great things about it. But like, that's a perfect representation of some bad people in this world that would use kids for what. And it's just, to me, that's the most evil thing there is. But anyway, check this out. So yeah, will tech make it possible? So basically, we don't have to worry as much. Now, I want to state this. Some of you guys don't like the idea of like 15-minute cities. I don't. But I do feel as though that all this technology where CBDCs and so on can be used for good, could use for bad, depending on who's using it. When we get more into this outline, if anything, I like what's mentioned, especially as a school teacher, because as you know, you have one side of politics who says we need to ban all guns, and you have another side that says, no, man, let's protect, my rights, right? Right to bear arms and so on. Shall not be infringed means one thing, right? And what you think it means another, the other side. So there's always been this back and forth thing in regards to it, and nobody really has a real solid answer. There's a lot of TikTok people, whether you're on the left, the right, in the middle, and so on. But when we get more into this idea of being able to, track the whereabouts of your kid and so on, or your students and so on, is, I think, a good thing. to a sense, because if anything, we talk about the Internet of Things, like what they're trying to accomplish over in Japan with Society 5.0, and it will mention Society 5.0 here in a bit. But all this traceable and trackable devices and so on, being able to see threats far away. If you guys ever seen like, was it like Minority Report and stuff like that? I mean, that thing seems really far out. That's like science fiction, but part of that actually isn't. Answer into this. Basically speaking, nobody likes the idea of like massive mass killing at schools or any of that stuff with these crazy shooters. But to be able to have something which you can identify before they even get close to these schools, like this guy's never been on a campus before, instantly be able to scan who that person is, and then on blockchain. Listen to this, guys. This is really big, especially if you're a Jasmy holder. On blockchain, be able to verify instantaneously, like who the heck this guy is, and again, he's never been here and so on. Attack the target before he does something crazy. That's game changer stuff. Instead of taking rights away from people who shouldn't, have the rights taken away from. Shouldn't we just attack evil from the root before it happens? Call it far-fetched, but that's the way I look at it. And I have taught at the schools, and I had to do the whole thing of, all right, guys, we got to do these drills and stuff like that. When I was a kid, we didn't have those drills. We have fire drills. But now kids at schools have these darn drills where they have to prepare for some of this stuff. And then I have to end up getting on a kid's case like, look, sorry to say, but you're actually going to get detention because you wouldn't shut the heck up during this drill. And congratulations, you're dead because you were laughing when a potential shooter could have been up in here. I mean, we have to take it really seriously, right? And of course, Mr. Stanley's being you know what? Well, hey, sometimes I got to be like that if it means for you to take it a little more serious. Whatever the case be, look at this. So, yes, Sato says that there will be this whole technology and it's going to be possible, right? He mentions that some of the features of blockchain, of course, is traceable. And basically, even if they are usually anonymous, deviant statements can be tracked down to the source. Again, like I was talking about earlier, some of these threats, especially to the schools. This is also called semi-anonymous. For example, when a child accesses a community, the user's identity is authenticated by the blockchain and is usually anonymous, allowing them to interact while adjusting the information they publish. Now, I'm not going to get into every little part of this, but on the interview, this person named Kimura, says specifically, even in the real world, you can show how much information you give out depending on who you're talking to. In the world of the internet, he was worried that once his personal information was disclosed, it would spread and basically speaking, he would be exposed all the time. But it is convenient and safe to be able to control his own personal information. Sato responds back with, this system can also be applied to consultations on children's concerns. Children today, say that chatting is easier than talking on the phone. Right. In some cases it is. Some of these kids, and I experienced this, myself, right? Where you have kids that just don't even know how to properly talk to people, like especially in this modern age. It sounds sad, but it's a reality. A lot of kids during, Gen Z? I guess that's what we call it now. It's the real life interactions, but they're more comfortable with, like a chat box. Say what you want. It's the reality. It says, therefore, consultations are accepted anonymously in chat, and there is an urgent event, or if there's an urgent event, the person can be identified by blockchain with permission. Again, like what I was just literally talking about. Goes on to mention some of this stuff. But anyway, grade management and the possibility of changing educational methods by yourself. So this guy Kimura says, like, for instance, like, what about school? And this is where I want to introduce this key thing to you, which is referred to as Giga school concept. And it says, I think teachers are also having a time with Giga school concept. Now, this was something that I guess you could say, start off in Japan, but there's even a US connection. I'm going to jump into all this. It's good stuff to pay attention to. And I would say that there's going to be some juicy stuff that you're not even aware of when it comes to an extra utility layer that you may have overthought or you thought of was speculative, right? We're going to confirm some of that speculation here in a bit. Basically, can blockchain tech be used to manage children's information? That is the key takeaway here. And I want to get into some of Sato's comments to break it down and make it more sense, like a little bit more sense for you guys. And so we have other coverage tonight, but if anything, check this out. So Sato responds, by using your what? Personal data locker, that PDL service, children will be able to manage their own grades. Today, elementary, middle, high school, and university are separately managed by what? Paperwork. And there's so much freaking paperwork. I mean, I remember even working at my local college and so on. I mean, from admissions to each class and, the modules, just unbelievable amount of paperwork that could have been completely cut out if we would just had it all on, for instance, like a DLT solution. But you got to keep in mind, this was back in like 2013. Totally different world that we're in right now, right? Those are like the first years of Bitcoin, So it says it's easy to perform analysis such as by sharing with teachers how they have grown so far. He believes that the educational methods will also change. Now, this mutual aid society is born, like it says, with blockchain. And, there's a lot to be, get into here, but I want to jump down to this. And basically speaking, like this guy says, what if a child asks, like, what is blockchain? How should I explain it? Well, there's all sorts of things mentioned here, but he goes into deep, like his own deep dive, if you will, Sato. He talks about, autonomous decentralization, talks about democratization of data. He says, either there is no administrator in the middle, a program for each purpose is written on the blockchain and called a smart contract. What's one of the main topics that we've been talking about all week, whether it's Jasmy, Stellar, we've been talking about, Hedera, we've been talking about Casper, but at every single turn, we've been talking about smart contracts. So getting more into this, it says, until now, such mutual aid societies were mainly based on local units, but it's now possible to create them from distant countries. Blockchain makes that possible. So again, there's a lot that's mentioned here. I'm not going to get into all the bits and pieces about it, but it's pretty good. But the main thing I want you to take away from this was this right here, Giga School concept, and I decided to look more into it. So I'm going to take you more into this concept of Giga School program. And if anything, maybe even tie some XDC into it. Oh, God, here's Max again. He first does, Jasmy with Quant, and now he's going to do XDC with Quant. Hear me out on this. You're going to enjoy the deep dive tonight when it comes to Jasmy and XDC. So Japan's Giga School program equips students for digital society. I'm going to jump down to this. All right. So basically speaking, this was a series that gets more into this. But it says the government, as in the Japanese government, initially hammered out the Giga School program all the way back in 2018. Now, do I have anything that's new in regards to this year? Of course I do. But we're going to give you that outline. So it goes to mention that, back then in 2018, this was to ensure that they would have computers and high-speed internet, right? These students and so on. And that educators would have the techniques to teach pupils how to master digital tools and learn online. Now, Giga, if you didn't understand what that meant, it basically stands for Global and Innovation Gateway for All. That was part of what? Look what it says. The push forward for Society 5.0. Now, you know where I'm going with this already. And it says incorporating cyberspace such as AI, big data, and Internet of Things. Everything you see right there is literally Jasmy all the way. As I always would say, like a fat kid on cake. Max, you are a fat kid on cake. Well, whatever. The Ministry of Education, Culture, Sports, Science, and Tech originally targeted, and this is the good stuff, fully implementing Giga program by the end of March 2024. Now, I want to state this before we get more into this outline. And that is, you will see other projects boast or make claims that we're going to enter into the metaverse and we're going to bring an educational side to it. Well, say what you want, right? That's very speculative. And if anything, it's just kind of nice to say it. What about a project, especially Jasmy, who's really, really going to do it? And if anything, that is one of their main focuses for the metaverse. It's not necessarily just the video games and all that stuff, right? It's actually having a real, true online environment in the metaverse so kids feel as though they can have fun learning. They can be interactive, hence the chat boxes, where you want to call it, but they feel as though they could be themselves in this new learning environment. You may feel as though you don't agree with it over here in the United States, but what's one of the key things we've been learning for many months now when it comes to the concepts of Society 5.0, and especially with what Jasmy is trying to contribute to it? That is difference in the culture. And what kind of value does it have? Just because it doesn't work here in your homeland, where you're in the US, Canada, or wherever you're at, doesn't mean it can't work on the opposite side of the world, the Far East. Now, in regards to this, it says basically the Giga program's goal is to ensure that students in the Society 5.0 era, where information and communication tech, which is ICT, is part of daily lives and absolutely necessary, and absolutely necessary, will learn the needed skills and abilities to thrive, said who? Yuchi Aima, or I can't pronounce it right. Director of the Media Information and Foreign Language Education Division in the Education Ministry's Madison's Grocery List, Elementary and Secondary Educational Bureau. Look at the quote he makes here. States, we want to ensure that nobody is left behind and that opportunities are equitable, tailored to individual needs, and enable creativity. Again, hence, for instance, metaverse and so on. That's supposed to be a very creative environment, but a different environment in which is all inclusive. Now, I'm gonna go further down. It goes about this whole talk about one device per student. They're talking about how that wasn't the best choice, but nonetheless, it goes on to mention this right here. One factor behind was the dearth, which is like a different interpretation. I don't know if that's the real word, but anyway, this is Japanese to English, so bear with me. PCs for students in school education caused by tight local government budgets. It would also be resolved by providing computers for all students in a compulsory education by the start of the upcoming fiscal year. But anyway, 2/3 of the Giga's plan budget is allocated for PCs. Now, again, how do we tie this into everything? Think about it. It's not rocket science, everybody. So right now, as we speak, we know that we have, for instance, Jasmy secure blockchain PCs, right? And while we only have about 20,000 of these that were sold and so on, and they're not really technically plugged in and used and so on, what about the educational side of things? That isn't that big? Before we report to you guys the whole thing with Transcosmos, understanding that having multiple data centers, like those contracts where, hey, we're going to use these Jasmy secure blockchain PCs or laptops at all these call centers. That's a big contract, okay? But now enter in the whole concept of what? Right? The educational side of things. Because again, let's go back to it, where it says about 2/3 of the Giga's plan budget is allocated for PCs. That's big, because you understand that, for instance, Jasmy is tackling these areas. Now, of course, naysayers will say one thing, and naysayers will say all they want. They'll just look at the short term and so on. You got to keep in mind, just like all the other projects we cover, the X's, the Q&T, all that stuff, we got to get to the point where you have full implementation, but mass adoption. But what if, like I said before, since with data free flow with trust and that regulatory framework where Japan is embracing these technologies, again, they're the ones that do it before the rest of us and so on, right? So we talk about that utility run. A lot of people are still wondering who will be the first to start part of that. this is where I do go back to the whole concept of, you know what? Jasmy could be simply because of where they're located geographically and where you have a whole different narrative on the society, no pun intended, that embraces all this technology. And if anything, what industries are involved with this? This is the educational side of things. And when I see that highlight right there, 2/3 of Giga's planned budget is allocated for PCs, I said to myself, oh my God, Jasmy secure PCs, 2/3 right there, that could be big. And even if they lowballed it, and like we're always lowballing Jasmy price of $1, um, you know, at the next bull market. Again, this is one sector, okay, of many sectors for the Internet of Things that Jasmy is part of. Look at this. We're going to go further down into this. This, of course, is going to help teachers with their students on how to conduct online searches and use software for writing, put together presentations, so on and so forth, right? Again, there's a lot that's, basically mentioned here. This part's also good. All right, let's get into this. This person right here, no, has nothing to do with the Saitama you're thinking of. But it says Toda in Saitama Prefecture stands out for its early action. The city's policies, similar to the Giga program, involve distributing PCs to who? All students starting from 2016, ensuring internet access, including providing mobile routers to households without net access and training teachers. Now, this part is big, especially if you've been following the whole concept of Society 5.0 with us at CTN with our deep dives. Check out this quote. This is big. If you missed any other part, listen to this. Digitalization wasn't pursued before because of tight budgets and because blackboards, chalk, and handouts had been successfully as seen in international test scores. Why mess with it? Was the view, said Yuki Fusagawa, an official at the Toda Board of Education. Quote, we realize, however, to be able to raise children well equipped to deal with Society 5.0 and an age when AI is at the forefront, that ICT skills were absolutely necessary. So teaching kids about some of these skills, understanding at some point they're going to probably learn about, let's face it, the new era that we're going to, blockchain, because how can you have Society 5.0 not understand distributed ledger technologies and so on? So the new generation of students are literally going to be learning all this stuff when it comes to, innovative blockchain solutions, DLT, all of that. So it's not like, we're going to teach these kids this and then, if anything, dismiss data democratization and all these goals we're, trying to achieve. No, it's literally going to be at the forefront. All right. I'm not going to talk your head off about all this stuff, but I do like this last statement from us. It says, for instance, the government will be able to more effectively implement the Giga program nationwide. And like it says in the quote, at the ground level, he said, some strong examples are already being put into practice. Now, as we get more into this, and you're wondering specifically, like, does Max have anything more in regards to this? You better believe I do. And when I found out about it was in regards to, like, if you're thinking like, well, you mentioned something about XDC. Yeah, absolutely. What I want to share with you guys is when I got more into this deep dive, it references the International Trade Administration, which is Japan's educational, like, technology opportunities and so on. There's a whole piece about this, and this is good stuff. So in this outline, to continue just a little bit and get to the good points that you need to pay attention to, we have been covering here at CTN, and a lot of other content creators to talk about as well, is the electronics trade documents, bill that became an act. And that goes in effect, obviously, on September 20th. Now, I did talk about Giga Project just now and introduced it to you guys and so on. And this is very, very, in my opinion, extremely bullish. And I have not, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn here, I have actually tried to find out if any other content creators have been talking about this, and I have not seen it. If they have, please let me know. I wanted to bring this to you guys because I haven't honestly seen this. If you're wondering about a U.S. connection, check this out. Top left corner. Department of Commerce, United States of America, and the International Trade Administration. Now it states, and we again introduced this to you just now, like a few minutes ago. The Giga project is a nationwide project which involves other government agencies such as the Ministry of Economy, Trade, and Industry, which is called METI. Excuse me for a second. This thing's driving me crazy. So, basically speaking, METI and the Ministry of Public Management, Home Affairs, Post, and Telecommunications. The Ministry of Economy, Trade, and Industry's role. Well, look at this for a second, okay? We understand that this whole thing that's going on, like I mentioned before, with the UK, setting down the framework, if you will, when it comes to trade is a very, very big deal. But at the same time, if we can have the United States obviously working with Japan and vice versa, that's a big deal. Yesterday's show, we talked about Japan and the United States, and we confirmed with proof this time, because everybody, not everybody, but some people say that, oh, it's just all speculative. This Max guy is just speculative. Yeah, and then I confirm it later, right? We have confirmed yesterday that DFFT is no BS. And that basically speaking, that the United States literally took DFFT, right, and basically threw it into what is going to be our new framework, but called it something else. We gave you the proof yesterday, and if you didn't watch yesterday's show, that's fine. Literally showed in the outline just that. Now let's fast forward to today. METI is supporting the Giga School project by subsidizing Japanese businesses that join and offer services and content to schools and local governments. To fully implement the Giga project, METI is offering Japanese ed tech companies and consortia funding to implement or modify ed tech software such as LMS, study aids and advanced study programs, school business support systems, and communication tools such as the school backyard support system. Large companies, generally those with more than 300 employees, for instance, are required to partner with small and medium size enterprises. Okay, I want you guys to pay attention to this part too. Earlier, a few days ago, and this video got hardly any freaking views. Another perfect case of people just want to see a very flashy thumbnail. On the Ripple XRP coverage that we had, that recorded video, even if you don't own Ripple, you should watch that interview with that lady from Ripple, because she goes into detail about the significance of small and medium-sized enterprises, SMEs. Now, you got to keep in mind, Jasmy is definitely, covers all this as well, not just small and medium-sized enterprises, but also the bigger scale ones. Again, just like Ripple, it's not just about central banks and cross-border payments and all that stuff, but also catering to small and medium-sized enterprises. Goes into a little bit more about this, talks about SMEs that can choose to apply directly for funds or form partnerships to complete that basis for funding. But the bottom line is this right here. This implementation plan shows Japanese government determination to address Japan's perceived slow pace of adapting EdTech and to surpass other countries that have aggressively pursued IT solutions in the classroom. Now, just a tad bit more in regards to this. So it mentions some key things that we showed you, I think, earlier. I don't know if I skipped this part, but it was in regards to like mobility. Hold on. Let me pull up the part about the phone. Yeah, here we go. And basically speaking, it's like these kids in these classrooms, right? They can identify so easily when it comes to the concepts of, let's face it, like chat rooms and all that stuff. This was actually on the earlier part of the outline. I found it. Let's jump back to this. Excuse me. So this part of this interview, and again, I'll jump to the end here in a second, with Sato and this person, Kiko Kimura. Kimura states that he has two, children, and tablets and smartphones have already been part of their daily lives. Right. Sato goes on to mention that he says, for instance, the mainstream, in regards to, like, let's face it, mass adoption. Everybody out there, from, I don't know, unless you've been living under a rock your whole life, has a cell phone, right? I mean, even the older generation has a cell phone. But look at this. It says nowadays information is stored in tablets and smartphones, making it difficult for parents to grasp it. The internet has many positive aspects, right? But the key thing is, does Jasmy have anything at all when it comes to, cell phones? And this has been brought up numerous times. I've seen people say, hey, this is real cool about the whole, Jasmy secure PC, especially the Vita laptops and so on. When will Jasmy break into, like, the cell phone market? You know what I mean? Like, a 5G smartphone with a PDL inside the smartphone. Now, this is where I will also thank who? Neo X Tricks. Check this out. And this will close things out for the Jasmy coverage here in a bit. And this is really, really good stuff. All right, let's share this tab instead. So on this, it goes to mention Jasmy releases LTE compatible Android single board computer ideal for IoT device development. You probably were never aware of that. Now, of course, this was back during the time of 4G, and this is all the way back when, during the time of 2017, we've, of course, come a long way, right? But I want to show you the actual news piece about this, and if anything, I'll drop this in the comments, and it's from me. It's not from the other guy. There it is. And basically speaking, were you aware? Probably not, and it's okay, that Jasmy, like I said, released this LTE compatible Android single board computer ideal. Again, I just read it again. IoT device development. It was back in May 1st of 2017. This was reported. Excuse me. Back then, they announced that on the 1st, they will start providing samples of general purpose 4G LTE Android single board computers. They had original sample price for 30,000 yen, excluding tax. I don't know what the conversion was back then, so I can't even quote what that would be in American dollars. But the company, at least then, had plans to widely provide it to companies that are considering developing IoT devices or services and introducing them to the market. That's the bottom line. It gives the specs on exactly what it is. And I love this part too. According to the company, as in Jasmy, the functions required for IoT devices are packaged and the product is small, so it can be used for various devices and can be expected to shorten the development period and reduce cost. Gives you all the specs back then. I mean, nowadays, that's not that great specs. But the key thing is this, that I want you guys to take away from this, all right? And that is, if they were able to do it then, they are basically able to do it now, and that is to create some of this technology. That should be one of your key takeaways. It's like we talk about this whole concept of smart wallet. I have stated numerous times that I feel as though that at some point I'll be able to use, like, for instance, my cell phone and have that smart wallet and so on. But again, can you imagine, instead of just one layer of IoT devices, as in a Jasmy secure blockchain PC, now we have phones. We gave the example of those watches, right? All sorts of IoT devices. That's the bottom line. Now, I did mention the whole thing in regards to XDC and all that stuff. I want to talk to you guys about this. I mentioned Medi, did I not? Now, were you aware that Medi, for instance, has jurisdiction over a broad policy area, and that contains basically Japan's industrial trade policies, listen to this, and energy security control of arms exports. It's referred to as Cool Japan. One of my first deep dives I ever did for Jasmy is Cool Japan. And just to give you proof, because as the saying goes in hip hop, snap back to reality, right? Well, here it is. All the way about 6 or 7 months ago, I did a deep dive. It was not that long of a deep dive, but it says Cool Japan, NFTs to DAO's the Jasmy connection. So if you want to understand it without me re-explaining it again, check out that video. It's part of our research catalog. And all you have to do is go back about 6 months in the video section, or you can go to the far right on the search right here. I'll show you how to do that. And it has this little magnifying glass, and you just type in Cool Japan or Cool, and you will see that video highlighted. What's big about that is how all this is tied into the trade sector. And even with the United States, like you saw on that previous article that we showed you earlier, which is this one right here. Again, what does it show? That this is the official website of the International Trade Administration. And last but not least, how Japan welcomes the partnership of who? The United States companies with solutions to help Japan put the latest what? Mobile devices in the hands of every Japanese student. So I gave you the outline, and I showed you where Jasmy was in 2017, the concept. Fast forward to where we're at now with the International Trade Administration. Understand where XDC is when it comes to especially the Electronics Trades Documents Act. That should be big when it goes into effect on September 20th. Understand where Jasmy is part of this whole mix, especially when it comes to data free flow with trust, and understand where we're positioned as the United States and also working with Japan. I think that was a great analogy of tying in, for instance, even the XDC side of things. But last but not least, Giga, a global and innovation gateway for who? All, everybody, right? And if anything, 2/3 of the PCs, right, on that budget. Again, understanding what Japan or Jasmy, I should say, is connected to and so on. And if anything, recognizing XDC, how they're connected to the world trade worldwide, right? World trade worldwide, excuse me. How especially they're connected to what? SBI Japan. And that's another thing. I'm not going to jump in back to that as well, but we did do a piece a few months ago that says Jasmy, QNT, XDC, and it specifically mentions SBI Japan, and especially when it comes to XDC. You got to keep in mind, the plug, like I've always said before, is Genki Oda, because he represents 3 different sectors. BitPoint, right? To be able to blanket BitPoint, Bitcoin, ATMs, if you will, these BTC machines blanketed all across Japan. Also, he's a chairman of SBI Japan. And then last but not least, part of JVCEA, formerly known as FSA. And if this is your first time tuning in, basically that's the Japanese version of the SEC. So there you go, guys. I mean, you guys say I connect the dots. There's another example of just that. I hope you guys enjoyed this coverage of tonight for Jasmy. That was extremely interesting and glad to be able to bring it to you guys. Please smash that like if you haven't done so already.